Hi, beautiful Black family. This is your girl J Rose here. How you doing? I'm good. I just wanted to come to you today because, of course, you guys know I'm a true journalist at heart. And when I feel the need to want to talk about something, I'm just going to talk about it. And I hope that, you and your family can have a discussion about this because there's some real shit going on right now. And as much as we, as Black folks, don't like to seem like we're too political or we're too this or we're too that, we need to be because they're declaring war on us and we need to know what we're up against. So what I want to talk about today is something that if you're from Detroit, you already know what this story is about. It's about the major school closures that's going to go down, supposedly going to go down either this summer or next school year in the Detroit Public Schools District. And I say this because this is after the other day when Miss Betsy DeVos just got confirmed for Education Secretary. And so I kind of wanted to do a little piece on what people like DeVos's plan, how has that manifested into what people think. So we know what Betsy DeVos's rhetoric is. We know that she believes in funding either charter schools or religious schools using taxpayer monies to, fund those schools without having any oversight over them. And so it's one thing that we know what her plan is, but it's another thing to actually see how her money is working for her in this area. She's literally putting her money where her mouth is when it comes to this. So I was doing some research and I happened to be on the World Socialist Network, and so I'm going to read you some of the notes that I took from it because it's very informative on what the facts are as far as the situation and how nobody's hands is clean in this situation. So Michigan State Reform Office released a list of 38 schools to be closed as early as June 30th of this year due to non-performance. And so non-performance, what they mean is that the test scores were low. The standardized test scores is low, and it's a whole nother. You can go into a whole nother tangent about if test scores really show the growth or proficiency in a student, and if that's warrant enough for a school to be closed solely based off of that. I personally think that there are other economic or other social factors that should go into the decision of closing a school, but for right now, they're clearly just looking at the test scores. So if the test scores are low, they're going to close the school. So Betsy DeVos, as you know, unfortunately, she's our new Secretary of Education. She supported a 2009 state law along with a group of lobbyists called the Green Lakes Educational Project, also known as GELP. And GELP is basically a lobbyist firm. As I said, lobbyists are basically people who are paid to advocate for whatever you want. So if I had $1 million and I wanted to go pay someone to lobby for, I don't know, for better working conditions and a minimum wage increase, if I had enough money, I can pay people every day, all day, to go push my agenda. And that's basically what Betsy DeVos is doing with the lobbying firm, or with the Great Lakes Educational Project. And it's really just a project to, the ultimate goal is to privatize public schools. So that's one list of 38 schools to be closed. So on top of that list of 38 schools, you have another 35 schools that are on a second list for possible school closures that are supposed to be set to happen during the 2017-2018 school year. So if this is all implemented all together in the scheme of things, it's going to be 53 schools that are going to be closed. So in the city of Detroit, I mean, just like in any city, that would be huge if they closed 53 schools. I'm going to get to the meaning of all of this in a minute, and what I think they're trying to do, what I know that they're doing. So if implemented, this means that 53 schools are going to be permanently shut down. Under Michigan's law, the priorities under Michigan's law, the priority schools, as they call them, which are really the schools that are in the bottom 5% as far as low test scores, they can be shut down or taken over by a state-appointed CEO that has the right to terminate contracts. They would have the right to fire people if they want, and then they would have the right to turn the whole district, if they want to, into a for-profit charter school district. And it doesn't start with just Betsy DeVos. It's not like Betsy DeVos just came out of the woodwork and just said, I want to privatize schools. In Michigan, at least, this is something that they've been working towards for a while. And I also put in my notes that a lot of these measures of what Betsy DeVos has been trying to do as far as the whole charter school privatization, whatever thing, these measures, these things that she was doing wouldn't have passed bill-wise or law-wise had it not been for the support and cooperation of, guess who? The Obama administration, the local Democrats in Michigan, the National Education Association, and more importantly, the American Federation of Teachers Union. So basically, all of these measures that, sorry to be scratching myself in public, but all of these measures that Betsy DeVos has been trying to do, it's not like she just decided to do all of this yesterday. This is something that has been supported, not outly, but Democrats or not supported, but they let this go on. The Obama administration let Betsy DeVos do her thing in Michigan. The local Democrats in Michigan let her do her thing in Michigan, even though it wasn't working. And so, these mass school closures are now going to be at the discretion of the State Reform Office, which is now directly supervised by Governor Rick Snyder. And we all know that Governor Rick Snyder is not our biggest fan right now. And I don't think he's ever been. I never really cared for Governor Snyder. I knew he was a snake. To me, Governor Snyder is like Donald Trump before Donald Trump. He's like Donald Trump light. Like, he's not as crazy on the outside, but his legislation is extreme, and he'll hit you where it hurts, just like Donald Trump is finna hit regular people where it hurts. So, Obama mandated this Every Student Succeeds Act, and it's basically a policy that mandates the intervention in low-performing schools. So, basically, Obama set up this, it's kind of like his version of No Child Left Behind, kind of. It's like when a school is failing, meaning in their eyes when test scores are low, that gives the state, under Obama's policy, this gives the state the right to come in and intervene and establish a priority schools list of the bottom 5% of lowest performing schools. And I've supposed that they have had to have these low performing scores for at least 3 years. And so, in Detroit, there are 10 high schools on this list. And these high schools most of these high schools are all on the same side of town except for a few. So you're going to have a side of town, if they go through with this, they're going to have a side of town where there's no high school. So there are 10 high schools on this list, including Denby High School, Ford, Mumford, Pershing, as well as academies that were formerly a part of Cody and Osborne High. And as far as what the parents have received about this, I've heard of parents receiving letters from the state of alternative schools, but the problem is that these alternative schools are unattainable transportation-wise. They are out of reach. I've heard a report of a parent who was living downtown, and they sent her a letter suggesting that she send her kid to a school in St. Clair Shores, which is about a 50-mile walk, so you can only get there by car, which makes it kind of impossible if you don't have a car. And so as far as Rick Snyder's people are basically saying that they're going to aggressively go after this, and that transportation issues can, quote, be solved. I don't even know what that means. Does that mean that they're going to bus kids now? Or does that mean what? I don't know what they mean by the transportation issue will be solved. I don't get that. But the districts that demonstrate to the SRO, which I said represents the, it's a coalition that people like Betsy DeVos have, and they have to demonstrate to this committee, to this, basically a reform committee, that the students will face an unreasonable hardship if these schools are closed down. Now, they quote unreasonable hardship, meaning like, I take an unreasonable hardship, meaning like, this is going to affect the whole neighborhood, which it is. This should be considered an unreasonable hardship to close all of these schools at one time. So I found that if the district can prove this, that there isn't a reasonable hardship by making this move, they can at least temporarily put these plans on hold. Now, there's a Wall Street crediting firm called Moody's, and they did an analysis of what they've seen so far of the district, and basically they came to the conclusion that the entire district could face severe financial hardships because of the loss of students from the school closures. In Michigan, education funding also follows that student through a state-managed foundational grant. And this Wall Street firm notes that the entire school district can find themselves at risk for total privatization due to enrollment losses. So due to the enrollment losses itself, it can warrant privatization. So closing these schools is just going to be the icing on top of the cake. So if these schools close, this is going to be perfect for making Betsy DeVos's case of why privatization of public schools should be considered. Now, I don't want to take up too much time, but Mike Duggan, who is the mayor of Detroit, he's running for re-election on the promise of trying to fight this. So him and the Detroit Federation of Teachers and the Democrats claim that they're going to be fighting these school closures, which I kind of feel some type of way about. And I also made it a point to note that these are the same entities, meaning Mike Duggan and the teachers union and the local Democrats. This is like them saying that they're going to fight for these school closures to not happen is basically like the fox guarding the hen house right now, because these are the same folks. And if you're not from Detroit or from Michigan, I'll put you up on game on this. Last year, there was a massive teacher strike in a teacher sick out, not strike, because they weren't allowed to strike because of how their contracts were. They were not allowed to strike, so they had to get creative about it, and they did it as a sick out. So they all called off sick at the same time, and it was really a strike, but they disguised it as but for legality they disguised it as a sick out so they wouldn't be penalized for it. Now, they did this, the teachers did this sick out with the support of the students and the parents, because it's been national news at this point. The Detroit public schools, a lot of these Detroit public school buildings are in deplorable conditions. There's, the books are outdated. They're old. There's mice in the building. There's rat feces. It's cold in the building. It's overcrowded. It's etc. It's everything you don't want your child to have an education and grow up in, or to have as an educational environment. And it kind of is ironic, and it's kind of very, very insulting to the intelligence that you got these folks like Duggan and the teachers union and these local Democrats that are claiming that they're going to fight this privatization, or they're going to fight Betsy DeVos, but you weren't fighting Betsy DeVos last year when she was doing this, and then instead of fighting Betsy DeVos on what she was doing, you decided to fight the teachers that decided that they were tired of bullshit, and they were tired of being treated any old type of way when they have the most important job in the world. So these same folks these are the same cats, these are the same characters that worked to shut down the teacher sick outs last year. Yeah, they did. Yes, they did. They stomped on them like not physically, but they literally, shitted on them and joined forces with the Democrats and the Republicans and the Obama administration to get behind. They tried to squash the whole working people trying to mobilize and fight for the right for public education. The Democrats, the Republicans, and when I say Democrats, that includes Mike Duggan and the Obama administration and the local Democrats, they all conspired with the Republicans to shut that sick out down and to get back to business, to go back to business as usual. And then on top of that, they not only did that, they all rallied behind Governor Snyder's rescue plan. You remember that, Detroit? Rescue plan. Snyder put aside this, it was if I'm correct, $617 million rescue plan to save Detroit public schools. It was a plan package to help the district, right? You remember that, Detroit? They did that. They said that about a couple months ago, that Snyder was gonna write a bill and write a check to save the district. Now, here's where the money really went. The rescue plan, the only people that plan rescue was the bondholders and Wall Street. And that's real. Those are the only people who got saved out of that rescue plan. And the only thing, and it saved the bondholders and Wall Street. So Wall Street is going to get their money regardless of whether these kids get a good education or not. The bondholders of these debts are going to get their money. That's basically who Governor Snyder saved when he did that bill. All the while making the new district that he made that underfunded. He underfunded the district while making sure Wall Street and the bondholders get their money. So screw the kids, right? So what does this mean? What does this all mean? Why are they doing this? And I'm going to keep this short because I don't have a lot of time left. But especially since Detroit is the biggest, blackest city, meaning not the biggest, but the blackest city, meaning there are more black people who live in Detroit than any other place in America. There's more black people in one space in Detroit than there are anywhere else. So personally, what I feel like this means is that they're trying to destroy the community. The only way you can destroy a community is if you kill schools. If you kill public education, if you kill the right for people who don't have a lot of means to get an education, what you create is that you create a neighborhood full of uneducated people, and then uneducated people, unfortunately, a lot of the times end up in the criminal justice system. So what I see is that this is a downplay for the school to prison pipeline. So not to say that this hasn't been going on already, but the school to prison pipeline in Detroit right now is in full effect, because I can give you research. I can do a whole nother segment about how in the state of Michigan they're spending twice the money on jails that they are in school. I was watching a report from a Baltimore teacher who had to conceal his identity just to talk about how horrible the schools were in Baltimore. And he pointed out that even in Baltimore, they spend more money on police and fire than they do on public schools. And so it's a priority thing, and it's also it's by design that they're doing this. They would never think about closing these suburban schools. I mean, I know it was one charter school on that list, and there were some schools that were outside of Detroit. But the point that I'm making is that this is an assault on black children. This is an assault on the black neighborhood, the black community. This is an assault, because what they're saying is basically is that your children, our black children, are not worth getting the same amount of money and funding that the other kids are. So if we have to choose